you had many questions concerning Christianity, God, the Scriptures, and I want to tackle a few of them and point them out why I think they're somewhat intellectually dishonest. There's a couple reasons you ask questions. One is because you lack knowledge and you want to be informed. Another reason is to provoke thought, to make people think, whereas you don't know the way that they're going to go. You don't know how the answer is going to go. The third way would be to trick or to trap people in their own ignorance and to display your own cleverness. I think the reason you ask these questions is a combination of the second and the third. I think you are honestly trying to provoke thought. I think you're honestly trying to make people think, to see the light, as you would say it. But I think that there's a level of dishonesty here, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to just talk to you a few questions. Some of the things that you said, that you pointed out was, if Thomas were alive today, would he be an atheist? Why doesn't God give the same degree of proof to Thomas that he gave to Thomas to me? How about to Paul? Hell doesn't fit the role of corrective, protective, or deterrent. What's the purpose of hell? Why is sin pleasurable? Why did he wait 4,000 years? Where is the second soul for the chimera? These are not questions that are coming from ignorance. You seem to have a very clear answer of why you think these are. Secondly, these aren't questions that are designed to provoke thought. These are questions that are type of gotcha questions. They are designed to say, look how clever I am. I have found where you're internally inconsistent. And let me show you what I mean by that. In the issue of Gog and Magog, in Ezekiel chapter 40, after the description of Gog and Magog, there's a very clear break in the visions of Ezekiel. It doesn't go immediately into the descriptions of the temple area as if the vision is simultaneously going on. That was misrepresentation on your part. It's very clear that there's a separate vision, that there's a separate entity. So they're not connected. Secondly, your presumption is that the vision of Ezekiel and the vision of John the Revelator are the exact same vision, that what Ezekiel saw and what John the Revelator saw are the exact same thing. John the Revelator pulls many illustrations and many visions from the Hebrew Scriptures. Your assumption is that John's and Ezekiel's vision are exactly the same. Where is your overwhelming proof that these two visions are the same? That what Ezekiel saw and what John saw are simultaneously the exact same thing? All of these questions illustrate a fatal problem with both your videos and your thinking. The second soul for the chimera issue, while interesting and certainly provides an interesting example, is predicated upon the notion that a human being is entirely wrapped up in the physicality of it, and that God couldn't in some way sort out genetic problems, and that's beyond his capability. These questions illustrate a problem. Your approach to these questions are through the eyes of an atheist, as opposed to understanding them from a Christian perspective. Now, let me illustrate what I mean. If you were a soccer player and you watched a football game, an American football game, you might complain about how they use their hands on the ball, how they have too many people on one side of the field, and how they don't have enough. But what you would be doing would be forcing soccer thinking upon a game that is not soccer. In other words, if you want to fairly criticize Christian thinking, you have to at least attempt to understand how things work and how things are put together internally, and not by the common, everyday, ordinary Christian, but by those who are better prepared to explain. To follow our illustration, if you want to understand American football, you would be better off talking to a coach, a former coach or a former player, someone who knows the game intimately. Instead, you drag a fan off of the field and drag up his arguments as to why football plays the game the way it does, and you use soccer reasoning to criticize football reasoning. What this does is that you don't get someone who understands the nuances of the game. You find someone who's a casual fan who enjoys playing, who loves the game, but doesn't understand it in intimate detail. This is a fatal flaw of nearly all atheistic thinking. You don't actually tackle real modern Christians tackle ordinary ones. I noticed you said you read Josh McDowell. What you didn't point out was where his logic was flawed. You didn't point out what you failed to accept. You simply held the book up and said that you found it not convincing or not compelling. And then you moved on to criticize the arguments of common, everyday, ordinary people, like, why don't you convert just in case, using Blaise Pascal's wager, which is an argument, by the way, that is over 300 years old. It's not that I don't think Blaise Pascal's wager isn't any good. What I would simply say is, isn't there someone else, maybe a little bit more current to our way of thinking, who might have a better argument as to why you should convert? Doing it like that is paramount to pulling up Plato and saying why Plato didn't understand the world of the 20th century, so therefore everything Plato said was wrong. That's a little bit of a stretch. One of the things you didn't even acknowledge in the last video, the person who replied to yours, was the argument of understanding Christianity as a type of language. It's like you either didn't understand what he was saying, or you simply had no answer. You criticized his Stalin argument, and you called it intellectually dishonest, but you failed to acknowledge that a person who's seeking rational answer would resort to an emotional pull. You claimed that you did this because Christians do this all the time. Well, Christians do this because they believe that decisions are not simply made with reason, but that people make decisions with their heart as well. In other words, the action of making emotional pulls for a Christian is flowing out of a genuine, authentic belief about how decisions are made. In your employment of that particular emotional pull, are you claiming that Christians were right to make emotional claims as opposed to rational ones only? So in conclusion, I just wanted to wrap this up and say this has been interesting. I know this is a rather long video and probably no one will follow it all the way through, but that's immaterial. I would be much more interested in doing this via email, via privately between you and I. Some kind of internet interaction would be great. I want to thank you for watching the video and taking this time to allow me to critique precisely where you're coming from. Once again, my complaint is not that you're not a Christian. My complaint is that if you want to critique Christianity, you need to authentically come at it and try to understand it from an internal perspective. In other words, understand what it's trying to do and what it's trying to say, as opposed to trying to pick at it from the outside with a refusal to acknowledge what it is that it's shooting for, what it's trying to accomplish, and that would provide you a better understanding. Thank you.